in the Oval Office, in the White House.
Can I keep it?
What do you
As the World Cup exposes double standards and discrimination, we ask a former coach of Iran's national team how the unfair treatment of some has undermined the spirit of the game.
The American players are treated as athletes and in a way global citizens, while, for example, the Iranian players are so tied to the ideology of their government. And that for me is unfair.
And we ask a former US player if FIFA is breaking its own rules.
It's hard to know where the performative security theater begins and the straight-up racism ends. When organizations like FIFA say that they're neutral, all too often that means siding with the powerful. Remaining neutral when it comes to what's happening in the United States with constraints on immigration to participate in and watch the World Cup, that just means that you're siding with the bully.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rida Fakhri. Before the World Cup began this summer, there were warnings that playing most of the matches in the United States, which is co-hosting the games with Canada and Mexico, would bring chaos and accusations of discrimination. Soon it became clear those warnings were right.
We're working on it very closely to make sure the right people come into our country.
Unfortunately, our world is, a very aggressive world, and security goes above everything.
To be honest, we don't ask for much. We just ask for the same procedure for all the other 47 teams.
We encountered numerous problems, among them visa issues affecting more than 15 staff members and managers. There were many challenges. You understand football, you know this was not fair play.
Even before the tournament began, Somali referee Omar Artan was denied entry into the US upon arrival in Miami, despite holding a valid visa and a diplomatic passport. US authorities said Artan was found inadmissible due to unspecified vetting concerns. Then there's the highly unusual treatment of the Iranian team. Players had to stay and train in Mexico for games played in the US. They also had to leave the United States immediately after their matches. Afshin Ghotbi was Iran's national football coach from 2009 to 2011. He has also worked with the US national team at the 1998 World Cup. He joins us now. Afshin Ghotbi, you're both an Iranian and US national. Today, the treatment of Iran's national football team by the United States at the World Cup has raised a lot of eyebrows. How do you see it?
Personally, I was very sad to see once again the influence of politics in sports. And I've always been an advocate that sports is all about human spirit and about peace, about joy, about people. And I've always been against politics coming into sports. And when I see how everything now is a very mixed, confusing salad, it really saddens me. Because I think the players of Iran and the people of Iran deserve, as anyone, more equity and more fairness.
The head coach of Iran's national team has said that his players have been facing oppression. Do you agree with him?
I think psychologically, all Iranian people, regardless of where they live and regardless of their ideology, they've been in a very, very difficult place. Partly because their homeland is being bombed. They've been under incredible economic and social sanction. They've been in isolation. Iranians living abroad have been discriminated wherever they are, whatever they do. And then you have a football team that qualifies for the World Cup, and then they have to change their camp to go to a complete different place, and then have to logistically deal with the distances to come from Mexico to Los Angeles to play two of their games. Basically, they're kicked out right after the game. And then on top of that, as personally I experienced it as a national team manager of Iran, we've been facing this forever.
But it seems that this World Cup has seen politics interfere with the game much more than in previous World Cups. Should the United States have been allowed to ever host this game under these conditions?
The lines are very blurry. I think as we have lived in this world and evolved, I'm 62 years old, and what I've noticed is that uh, the world has become so much more polarized. That we have um, just the explosion of the population and the influences that we see because not only the resources are limited, but I also believe that sports have a very special place in the hearts of the people. And politicians are always using sports to be able to bring themselves closer to the people, to be able to control the narratives and really to benefit their own personal agendas. And I mean, it goes back as far as the Romans and the Greeks. So I do believe that it's becoming more and more difficult to focus on sports as it is. But football is a mirror of really the world that we live in.
And some people have gone as far as to say that what we're seeing now at the FIFA World Cup is a reflection of the colonial system, the imperialist system that has prevailed for a very long time. If the roles were reversed, if Iran were hosting the games, and if American players had been subjected to similar conditions, how would you think the Western governments, the global media, and indeed the entire world would have reacted?
I think we couldn't stop hearing about it. I do believe that the size of the microphones are very different based on who is speaking into that microphone. I believe that our society is so unequal in so many levels.
And it has exposed the amount of hypocrisy that we see in double standards. Would FIFA ever have allowed a country from the global south to have hosted the games with these types of restrictions?
Well, I see how political FIFA has become, but part of the reason they're going that direction is because they need governments to be able to facilitate them for various fixtures and tournaments. And as we see so many more games being played in football, and the amount of money that's being generated from the sport, I'm not very surprised because you just have to follow the money, and then you realize the politics will follow that.
And do you believe there are two different standards, one for countries that are aligned with the West and one for countries from the global South that are viewed as geopolitical rivals?
I've always wanted to kind of understand why would a football player or why would a coach, why would a football team um, be so connected with the ideology of a government. I look at the English team as they stand and the national anthem is being played. I think rarely people are connecting them to the government of England. Maybe they don't agree with the British policies. Maybe they don't agree with American policies, but the American players are treated as athletes and in a way global citizens, while, for example, the Iranian players are so tied to the ideology of their government. And that for me is unfair because I've been there in the shoe of those players and I've been there next to them. They love the game. They want to do good through their passion for something they started doing as age 3. They're living their dream and they want to make their people happy. And countries have, especially like Iran with a 2,500 plus year history, we're talking about a country that's contributed so much good to this planet in arts, in music, in everything you can imagine. And now, based on the ideology of a group of people that are running the country, almost 2,500 years has been thrown under the bus.
As someone who was born in Iran but who's lived in the United States for decades, in fact, since the age of 13, how have you seen the perception of Americans toward Iranians change over the years?
I'm not sure if it's really changed. When I was 13 years old in 1977, living in Southern California, we had the revolution in Iran in '79, and as I was going to school, and everybody saw in the news the hostages, and when my classmate realized I was Iranian born, it was amazing the amount of abuse that we experienced, and many Iranians walked around and called themselves Persians just to stop the discrimination and the attitude and the energy towards them. And I think that's been a narrative for since that moment until now. The Iranians are associated with terrorism, associated with just evil and bad people. And it's for me, you have 90 million people, and I've lived amongst them after going back for 30 years. There's some wonderful people in that country that only want to do good and want to be hospitable and friendly to the rest of the world.
You live in Los Angeles, which has a large Iranian diaspora. How would you describe the dynamics between them and Iran's national football team?
Um, I think it's very simple because the Iranian government have tied and connected themselves to the national team of Iran, and they've used the Iranian national team as a propaganda tool. So when that happens, there is a reaction from the diaspora who are against their ideology, and because of they're against the government and their policies, they go against the team, uh, and I feel that the players are in a no-win situation. If they stand proud and they play with their hearts out and they try to perform and win, they are traitors. If they show up and don't play and get a poor result, they are losers. So basically, they're in a no-win situation. It was interesting when the national anthem was being played, there were many boos. There were many flags of the last regime, and there were many flags of the present regime. But once the ball rolled and the first pass made and the first tackle, um, you saw almost 70,000 people get behind the players. And that just shows the power of the game and the beauty of the game. But also it shows that Iranians deep in their hearts love Iran and love their homeland, regardless of who's in power.
You have spent your life moving between two countries that are so often portrayed as enemies. What does it mean for you, both professionally and personally, to see athletes from your country of origin being subjected to the kind of discrimination that we've seen in this World Cup in your adopted nation?
Uh, I've devoted my life to football and to sports, and when I see that, not just for the Iranians, I see it for any group of people, any country. It really inspires me to try to bring change and do whatever I can to help bring equity and freedom and peace and harmony. Because I do believe sports have one of the few things in this world that can connect people and bring us all as a human beings closer. I've always said love, football, and food. Those three always bring people together.
Afshin Ghotbi, former coach of Iran's national football team, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Although this World Cup is considered the most inclusive, with 48 teams competing, it has also been fiercely criticized for its double standards. So just how politicized has the FIFA World Cup become? Jules Boykoff is a US academic and former professional footballer. He's also the author of Red Card, a recently published book about the politics surrounding the 2026 World Cup. He joins us now. Jules Boykoff, we saw how a select few teams from the global south, like Senegal, Uruguay, and others, were subjected to strict security checks on airport tarmacs even before the tournament began, that teams from the global north didn't have to go through. What did you make of this?
Well, it's hard to know where the performative security theater begins and the straight up racism ends with that. And I think it points to a larger paradox when it comes to this 2026 World Cup, which is there are more teams than ever who are competing, some 48 teams from around the world. So it's the most inclusive in that sense. but it's also based on exclusion coming directly from US President Donald Trump and his administration in Washington that are deliberately excluding fans from around the world and giving selective treatment to particular groups of people even once they arrive, like you described.
Has it been a level playing field in any way?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the travel bans, they're highly selective. They're targeted at specific regions of the world. Let's not forget that back in Qatar in 2022 or Russia in 2018, if you had a ticket to a match, that was essentially your visa. That is definitely not the situation that we're looking at here in 2026 in the United States.
How has all this affected the image that the United States has tried to project internationally? What kind of image has the world seen of America through this World Cup?
Well, I very much think it's a split picture because if we're talking about everyday people in the United States, they've been quite open and welcoming. I think it's been beautiful, for example, what we've seen in Kansas City, where Algeria's team has been welcomed with open arms. But if we're talking about the government from the United States, that's a very different situation. And for a long time, the Trump administration has made it clear that some people are very welcome in the United States and some people are very much not.
What has it revealed about America that we didn't know?
Well, I don't know. I think that a lot of people were pretty well aware of the fact that immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection have been acting in a manner that is over the top. I mean, let's not forget ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has actually killed U.S. citizens in Minneapolis. It has actually detained Native Americans. I mean, the level of irony there in detaining Native Americans. And I think the world really opened its eyes to that. And you can see that by the decrease in the number of tourists who've decided to come to the United States. Many of them are taking a pass on this World Cup and waiting it out for 2030 World Cup instead.
Should all of this have raised alarm bells for FIFA?
One might think that FIFA would have been extremely concerned in taking measures to make sure that people from around the world felt welcome when they arrived in the United States. But unfortunately, FIFA is led by somebody named Gianni Infantino. And Mr. Infantino is sycophantic at the molecular level. He's got a long history of kissing up to the leader who is hosting the World Cup. Whether we're talking about the 2018 World Cup, where he was very cozy with Vladimir Putin in Russia, whether we're talking about him cozying up to the emir in Qatar ahead of that and running interference on human rights violations, or whether we're talking about him cozying up to President Donald Trump, joining his board of peace, wearing a 45-47 MAGA-style cap at that event, whether it's going to the Melania opening, or whether it's giving him the FIFA Peace Prize. Apparently, the people on his powerful FIFA council didn't even know about it. They found out about it through a press release. So that points to the wider situation in FIFA right now, where Gianni Infantino himself is becoming more authoritarian, like the people with whom he's cozying up right now around the world.
Interesting to see how his predecessor, Sepp Blatter, the former president of FIFA, who himself has been banned from football for ethics violations, has been critical of Infantino's leadership of FIFA and the direction in which he's taken this World Cup. In fact, Blatter said this. He said, if a country refuses to allow a referee in, referring to the Somali referee who was denied entry into the US, then the World Cup should not be held in such a country. Do you agree? Is this basic?
These are very strong words, and I do agree. I think if the host country is not willing to actually welcome the world to their shores when they're hosting this big and important event, they should not be allowed to host. I mean, it's rare that I would agree with Sepp Blatter. Let's be clear. He is not among the best with us here on this earth, and yet even he has realized that since he fell down and out of the organization based on a corruption scandal, that FIFA is moving in the wrong direction.
You've written about politics in football for a very long time. Has FIFA always been politicized? Has it become less accountable today, or has it simply become more adept at managing criticism while maintaining the same power structures, the same political system?
Well, you're talking to a political scientist here, so I've long held the belief that soccer is politics by other means. And I think this World Cup is showing the world in Technicolor that that is the reality. The World Cup has always been drenched in politics, whether we're talking about Mussolini hosting the event in 1934, the Argentinian junta hosting the event in 1978, or more recently, the three World Cups that we were talking about before. The situation with Donald Trump hosting and trying to use the event to his political advantage is just the cherry on top of the sundae that tells us that sports are politics by other means.
You're saying that it's always happened throughout history, but are we entering a new era?
We may well be entering a new era where FIFA has gone too far in its sycophancy with President Donald Trump in the United States. It might be turning off a lot of people to the sport, which pains me because I personally love the sport. I dedicated half my life to the sport and trying to play at a relatively high level. So I do think we're reaching a pivot in the road here, and it'll be really interesting to see moving forward as we move toward the 2030 Men's World Cup, but also the 2034 World Cup in Saudi Arabia, whether the world is going to come along with FIFA as the greed machine continues to ramp up at the expense of working class fans who love the game and make it special.
Has FIFA become too dependent on powerful states like the United States to challenge them when they violate its own rules?
Well, FIFA has long run itself as a clientelistic patronage network going back decades where they take in millions, even billions from the Men's World Cup, and then they farm it out to football associations around the world. And this has led to a lot of compliance for whoever is heading FIFA at the time. It's very difficult to change a system like that. There is an effort right now from a human rights group called Fair Square. They have a Reboot FIFA campaign that's designed to create the biggest class action complaint against FIFA in the history of the world. And you can sign on yourself at rebootfifa.com. Let's be real. It's hard to change ossified power, and FIFA is an example of ossified power. But you have to start somewhere, and people are around the world waking up to the reality that something very much needs to be done.
But what difference will this make? And let's face it, will the powerful governments ever put pressure on FIFA if they're benefiting from this system?
Yeah, it's hard to know what difference the campaign from Fair Square will do, but I'll tell you, it'll make a lot more difference than doing absolutely nothing. And we definitely do need foreign groups from around the country to engage with this. If you could get governments on board, that could be a game changer. There are opportunities all around for this. I mean, I actually think the exclusion of Omar Abdul Qadir Artan was a real fail for the referees around the world who could have stepped up and used their collective power to say no and basically stop the World Cup in its tracks. So this is an all hands on deck moment where everybody who cares about the future of the sport needs to stand up and show a spine in the face of FIFA's power.
How would you describe the treatment of the Iran national football team at this World Cup? And what kind of precedent does it set for future World Cups?
The treatment of the Iranian team at the 2026 World Cup has been execrable. It's been vindictive, it's been petty, and it very much slices against what this tournament is supposed to be about, bringing the world together. FIFA has a slogan that they like to trot out whenever they need a little bit of a boost, and that is football unites the world. It's hard to see how willfully trying to exclude the players from Iran from the United States and making their lives very difficult fits with that theme of football uniting the world.
FIFA also likes to remind us how it is politically neutral. But can an organization like FIFA be politically neutral?
When organizations like FIFA say that they're neutral, all too often that means siding with the powerful. And I think we're seeing that in action right now in terms of remaining neutral when it comes to what's happening in the United States with constraints on immigration to participate in and watch the World Cup. That just means that you're siding with the bully.
You played football professionally for many years in the United States. In fact, you represented the US national team for the under 23-year-olds. How pivotal is this moment for international football?
Well, first, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm not some crotchety academic who doesn't like sports. I mean, I dedicated a huge portion of my life to sports. I have seen the power of sports play out in my own life and around me. And I just think that this World Cup gives us an opportunity to slow down and realize that football is actually worth fighting for. The people at FIFA, alongside President Trump, are essentially trying to make the people's game into a plutocrat's game, but it's not too late to push back. And I think we should think about this moment in this World Cup. What can we learn from it? And how can we link elbows together with people from around the world to fight for a more just FIFA moving forward?
Jules Boykoff, good to have you on the program. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, many around the world have pointed out the obvious. The US restrictions on certain teams and their supporters have violated the spirit of the World Cup and undermined the obligations that come with hosting the Games. It has also exposed serious questions of racism and fairness. Arguably, any other nation would have had their hosting rights removed by FIFA long before a ball was kicked. The double standards of this World Cup have once again exposed the underlying structure of Western dominance and the marginalization of the Global South as politics and football collide. From me, Rida Fakhri, and the entire team, thanks for watching.